Wake up, samurai. I need a new arm. Welcome to Player 2 Props. This video is the first in a series where I make a Johnny Silverhand arm from Cyberpunk 2077. In this video I'll make a pattern for all the pieces I need to make the arm, and I'll show you my process. So let's just jump into it. Samurai. So for the first step, I'm going to pattern out the hand, and to do that I'm going to use a method that I learned from Svetlana over at Cosplay. You're going to need a rubber glove, preferably one that fits you nice and snug. Then you're going to need a permanent marker, and then for the last thing, you're going to want a reference photo. I've got here a picture of Johnny Silverhand's silver hand. So the idea behind this method is to draw to the best of your ability the pattern you need for the parts of the hand on this glove. So I'm going to get to drawing. You want to make sure the glove is tight so you don't have to draw over a bunch of wrinkles. I chose to start with the back of the hand. It's a fairly simple piece. I knew I wouldn't use this pattern for the knuckles, so I quickly drew some placeholders. The fingers are a little bit trickier to draw. They're a lot more detailed, but they don't have to be perfect because I'll be cleaning them up in an upcoming step. And presto, it's done! I didn't draw the ring finger because I knew it would be almost identical to the index finger. Now it's time to cut it out. The glove is floppy and can be difficult to cut. The goal here is to make sure all our pieces lay flat. The back of the hand is easy, but the fingers need to be cut. This cut will leave a seam in the final product, so I decided to hide it on the side between the fingers. While this glove pattern isn't perfect, it gives us a good baseline for what a final pattern should look like. The next step is to take a picture of the pattern from directly above. This way we can bring it over to our computer and clean it up. Here I crop the image along the lines of the cutting mat. Thanks to these lines, I know how big this picture should be, so I can resize it. This one should be 8 inches by 11 inches. Now with the pattern the correct size, we can use a pen tool to trace it. It shouldn't be traced exactly because this part is supposed to be a clean-cut industrial piece. So I make slight adjustments to make sure the angles are uniform, the edges line up, and the corners are sharp. It helps to use guides like I'm doing here. This whole process would probably be a lot easier and more precise in our 2D CAD software, but I'm more familiar with Inkscape, so I decided to use it instead. Now you can see the finished piece. It's a lot cleaner than the original glove pattern. Now we just need to repeat the process for the other pieces. I decided to scale the index finger to create the other fingers, instead of tracing the glove pattern. Here I'm only estimating the appropriate size. Along with being scaled, the thumb piece needed a slightly different shape. With all the pieces done, it's time to print. What you're seeing now is actually the 4th version of this pattern. You want to cut out every piece and test fit it on your hand. For every version of the pattern you want to take note of things that need to be changed. Then you can go back into Inkscape and edit the pattern. Print it out again, and repeat this process, until it's just right. I might not have needed 4 versions if I actually took some measurements, but I just eyeballed it every time. And there you have it, we have a working finger. With all the pieces cut out, it's time to test fit the whole thing. So now that I know that the pattern works and all the pieces fit together, I can cut it out for real. And for that I like to use cardstock. It's a little bit thicker paper. It makes the pattern sturdier. It'll make it easier to trace it on the foam later. But to cut it out super precisely, I'm going to use my cutting machine. I set up the cut file so it would label each piece with the pen. And then it would cut each piece out. This machine can cut far cleaner than I can with a pair of scissors. But you don't need a cutting machine. I'll admit, this is pretty overkill. And here's all the pattern pieces I made for Johnny's hand. So now that most of the hand pattern is cut out and ready to go, I can move on to the arm. The arm has different armor plates that I'm going to have to pattern. Instead of wrapping my arm in a bunch of tape and drawing the armor plates onto that, they're fairly simple geometry, so I think I'll start by drafting them flat. And in much the same way that I used an iterative process to figure out the hand, I'm going to use that same process to do the arm. The arm patterns are done. So the real patterns is this one for the forearm, and this one is for the upper arm. And these are the ones that weren't quite right. So let me walk you through how I did it. First step was, using reference photos from all different angles, I was able to create a full 2D sketch of the pieces I needed in this notebook here. I then took those drawings into Inkscape and recreated them. I took measurements of my arm and used those measurements to size the pieces properly. I would then print out the pattern on paper and cut it out and test fit it, just like with the hand. Finally, I settled on this one, and I taped on this extra pattern that forms the upper cuff of the forearm. These were the original pieces for the upper arm, and this is what I ended up with. Now that I have all the pieces tested out on paper, I can cut them out in cardstock. So now I have a template of just about every piece of Johnny's arm. There's a couple pieces that require a little more R&D, like the fingertips, so I'll get to those later. But for now, I can move on to the next step. But the patterns aren't done, because pattern making is never done. You might be halfway through a project and realize the pieces you have from the patterns you made aren't quite right, and you might have to repattern it. And that kind of sucks. It can be frustrating to have to redo a whole piece, but it's better to redo the pattern and remake the piece now than to finish and have a piece that you're unhappy with. You don't want to regret having, not made the piece the right way. It's always better to put in a little bit more work now than, to get all the way through the project and realize, ooh, I should have remade that piece like I thought I needed to, because, you don't want to finish a project and not be happy with it, because why did you even make it in the first place? What's the point of all the work you put in if you took a little shortcut halfway through because you didn't want to have to redo something, and then ultimately the whole piece suffers, and then you suffer, and then what's the point? Why did you do it? And then it's like, why are you even a maker? Like, why did you make anything? Anywho, I hope you enjoyed my video on pattern making. In my next video, I'll be transferring these to foam, and I also have a special technique that I've never tried, but I think will make this build extra special. So that's coming up as well. If you liked the video, leave me a like. If you didn't like the video, or if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment down below. If you want to see the rest of this build, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a video. Thanks for watching.